The GetHealthy.store brand webinar, and I'm so excited to be introducing our featured brand, Transformation Enzymes. It's one that I use personally. I am Tracy Stroup. I'm a naturopathic doctor. I'm also the Vice President of Growth and Innovation right here at Get Healthy Store. And with me today is Dr. Milton Bastidas. Bastidas, did I say that right? Dr. Milton was born in Colombia and is a graduate from Texas Chiropractic College with an additional certification in functional medicine. He's the founder of True Lifelong Wellness Center and has been in practice since 1998 for the treatment of skeletal conditions, sports injuries, and systemic disorders. Dr. B is also the vice president for the College of Integrative Medicine, CIM, as well as the director of research and development at Transformation Enzyme Corporation. And he also has informed me he's doing some clinical trials on this brand, so we'll look forward to that in the future. I'm going to post your bio along with the link to our brand, Transformation Enzymes, in your Get Healthy store so you can find out more about Dr. Bastidas. I'm sorry, I can't say that correctly, but also Transformation Enzymes. This is an incredible brand. I use it personally, and it's something that you should absolutely have in your Get Healthy store. So Dr. B, I'm going to step aside. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for being here. And I'm going to mute myself and let you go.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for that kind introduction. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to shut off my camera here so I could fit my slides into my end. So, but I'll be back on when we're, there you go, when we're ready to go. All right, so my name is Dr. Milton Bastidas. I am Director of Research and Development at Transformation Enzyme Corporation, a company which over 30 years has been putting out in the market, in the medical market, products with enzymes in it. Now, enzymes, as you may already know, and I'm sure you do, they have a plethora of functions in our body. They make our life possible. They help digestion and nutrient bioavailability. But they don't only provide us with digestive properties. They also provide us with systemic properties. As you know, every cell in our body needs nutrients. And without those nutrients, well, the cell can no longer heal, regenerate, repair, and create more tissue. So enzymes are very, very important. I'm not going to go much into that because I want to leave room for the systemic part of the enzymes, which I think right now we're at, diaper stage of knowing exactly everything these proteolytic enzymes can do. All right, let's see here. Now, we believe at Transformation, everything begins in the gut. And as you can see here in our ripple effect of digestion, we have digestion at our central core. A healthy gastrointestinal tract will give you the ability to digest your food properly, absorb your food properly, and get all the nutrients necessary for that cell to regenerate. Now, if we have a dysfunctional gastrointestinal tract, then what the first thing that goes is your digestive capacity. Poor digestion will lead into the next ring here in the ripple effect, toxicity. And that toxicity after prolonged periods of time will create inflammation. And that inflammation for hours, days, weeks, months, years, then becomes an imbalance in one, two, or many systems of the body. Okay, so we have here the cardiovascular system, the digestive system, endocrine, lymphatic, muscular, nervous, urinary, skeletal, respiratory, reproductive. So impaired digestion leads to toxicity. That toxicity leads to inflammation. That inflammation leads to an imbalance. An imbalance where? In the cardiovascular system or the endocrine system or all of the above. So whenever a patient comes into our office, they don't usually say, I'm only suffering from this one thing and this one thing only. No, it's usually they spit out like 100 symptoms that you're going to have to wind down and deal with. And that's because we believe that improper digestion leads to toxicity, leads to inflammation, leads to an imbalance. And after a long period of time, chronic dysfunction, that imbalance can affect any one of these systems or all of these systems at a time. So what system is really going to get burdened? It depends on your, genetic predisposition. It depends on your lifestyle, and you're gonna start suffering from any of these things that you see here in our ripple effect of toxicity. So understand that poorly digested carbohydrates can ferment in the colon. Poorly digested fats turn rancid in large intestine, and poorly digested proteins putrefy in the colon. So all that leads to the toxicity I was talking about. That toxicity leads to the inflammation to the imbalance in one, two, or all of these systems. Okay, that's how we view this ripple effect of toxicity. Now, we need to feed the 11 systems of the body with nutrition to thrive. And that's the first step that we need to take care of in our healing journey. Okay, feeding these 11 systems. So diet is very, very important. Okay, without healthy eating as your foundation, then it's going to be difficult to unwind any of these things that people start suffering from. So in order to disarm any disease-triggering mechanisms, that structural and functional integrity of the gastrointestinal lining must be maintained or restored via nutrition. The digestive and proteolytic enzyme therapy, along with probiotics, are necessary for optimal nutrition acquisition, adequate circulation, and a healthy GI tract. These are critical factors that we need to ensure tissue integrity and help restore the health irrespective of the therapy adopted. So whatever therapy you choose or whatever specialty you're in, whatever modality you use, if diet, healthy living habits, healthy eating habits are not the foundation, then you're going to fight an uphill battle. And that's what we believe in transformation. So your diet, things that trigger your immune system in this ripple effect of digestion that I just showed you that creates inflammation from toxicity that leads to imbalance. These are the things that trigger that immune system response. Things such as your diet. We have food intolerances, alcohol, gluten, processed food, GMOs, stress, environmental, heavy metal toxicity, pathogens such as viruses, bacteria, parasites, poor sleeping habits. These are all things that will trigger your immune system to help in creating that ripple effect of toxicity that I just spoke about. In this slide, I want to show you how the immune system, once it's triggered, will create an inflammatory state, a chronic inflammatory state. Remember, now, inflammation is very important. We need inflammation. However, when that inflammation is chronic and it's silent every day for weeks, months, years, decades, that inflammation becomes harmful. So your immune system becomes, it gets to the point where it's uncontrolled and that chronic inflammation ensues and keeps going on and on and on. What I'm going to show you here in this slide is the NF-kappa beta pathway that is triggered through a noxious stimuli. So we have receptors, every cell has a receptor. And when there is a noxious stimuli, a bad signal, such as a food intolerance, such as lipopolysaccharides, such as anything that triggers the immune system to turn on, that noxious stimuli comes in here. And this is the NF-kappa beta molecule. Okay, the NF-kappa beta molecule is responsible for it's one of the pathways responsible for the inflammatory cascade. And we have an inhibitory kappa beta alpha protein here on top of this NF-kappa beta. When that noxious stimuli rings on that receptor, this metabolic enzyme phosphorylates this inhibitory protein, as you can see here. It adds some phosphates to it. And once it phosphorylates it, it takes off this inhibitory protein, and that inhibitory protein is degraded. But the NF-kappa beta molecule is now active. It's released. Now it's active, as you see here. And once it's active, it goes into the nuclear pore, into our nucleus, and along with some coactivators and RNA polymerase, it gets into the response element. And that NF-kappa beta is now a transcription factor that turns that mRNA into creating proteins such as pro-inflammatory cytokines, things such as TNF-alpha, interleukin-6, interleukin-1 beta, interleukin-12. The COX-2 enzyme gets triggered to break down prostaglandins into the pro-inflammatory prostaglandins. Now we have triggered inflammation constantly, and this cell function changes from whatever the cell is used to producing to now producing things to fend itself off of this noxious stimuli. Okay, so in an ideal world, this thing turns on, this mechanism turns on, and these pro-inflammatory cytokines take care of the noxious stimuli. And when that happens, you either, if you kill off the bacteria, the parasite, if you get rid of the food and food intolerance that's creating this noxious stimuli, then all this goes back to normal. The inhibitory protein gets put back on to the NF-kappa beta, and inflammation stops. That's in an ideal world, but we don't live in an ideal world right now. Stress, diet, heavy metal toxicity, viral loads, they all have a place in creating this noxious stimuli and turning this NF-kappa beta inflammatory pathway on. Okay? So this is pretty much the mechanism that turns that inflammatory process on to create the pro-inflammatory cytokines. Now, I'm going over this because when I start going into the proteolytic enzymes and their systemic benefit, you're going to see how proteolytic enzymes can, first of all, help with taking care of the noxious stimuli, if it's food related, if it's a virus, if it's a bacteria, if it's a fungal infection, if it's lipopolysaccharides, if it's biofilm, whatever it is that's triggering this inflammatory cascade to be turned on, I'm going to show you how those proteolytic enzymes are able to help getting rid of the noxious stimuli and also help in inhibiting this NF-kappa beta, okay, from turning on chronically. Okay, so we're going to see that shortly. Now, proteolytic enzyme health benefits. This is the next slide that I wanted to show you. So I took 12 bullets in the benefits of proteolytic enzymes. And this is just 12 bullets, okay? Like I said in the beginning, there's a lot more to proteolytic enzymes and their mechanism of action, but science has just now surfaced, has only scratched the surface. There's not a lot of research on proteolytic enzymes, so they haven't really established every single benefit of proteolytic enzymes. But I chose 12 of the most 12 of the most important benefits that you can apply in your clinical practice. Okay, so let's start here. Systemic enzyme therapy has been shown to overcome the cytokine storm. Now, we've all heard of the cytokine storm within the last 2 or 3 years with COVID. This is what's actually responsible for, people going into a complete lung failure when COVID hit. Enzymes cleave the antigenic surface protein of organisms and digest their outer coat. Thus, they defunct the pathogens. They reduce number and activity of receptors for pathogens on host cells. Thus, pathogen attachment is hampered and infectivity decreases. Now, this is important because whenever a microorganism, a pathogenic microorganism enters our system, it needs an attachment. It needs a receptor. Take SARS-CoV, for example. It needs that ACE2 receptor in order for it to attach itself and infect the cell. Without a receptor, then that pathogen is non-harmful. It's not harmful. So that's one of the things that proteolytic enzymes are going to help you with. And I'm going to show you examples of every single one of these 12 bullets. Okay, so they reduce the number and activity of receptors for pathogens on host cells. Next one, they detoxify blood and remove viruses from circulation. They act as biological vacuum cleaners, eliminating impurities, foreign proteins, immune complexes, and harmful microorganisms from the bloodstream and tissues. Enzymes aid in destruction of cancer cells. And this is a little bit of what I'm doing right now. We're in the beginning phase of doing an observational study on our proteolytic enzyme formula in prostate cancer, because it has anti-tumorigenic properties and it has anti-metastatic properties. So all that helps in the destruction of cancer cells. Enzymes cause enhancement of immune cells to kill bacteria, viruses, molds, and fungi. This is something you can use in your clinical practice when you're facing someone that has problems with chronic infections and things of that nature. They accelerate the volume and fluidity of blood flow. That's very important. In order for you to be able to heal, you need circulation. You need good circulation. If your circulation is stagnant, then you won't get enough nutrients, you won't get enough oxygen, you won't get enough water to the injured site. So that's very important. Enzymes such as bromelain modulate the arachidonic pathway. Okay, arachidonic acid is a substrate for the COX-2 enzyme, and that then gets converted to the inflammatory prostaglandins. So bromelain, one of our proteolytic enzymes, is able to modulate that. Enzymes activate the alpha-2 macroglobulin, aka the cytokine catcher. And this usually exists in blood in an inactive form, but once you supplement with proteolytic enzymes, this alpha-2 macroglobulin gets activated because it is a enzyme protein carrier. That's why your immune system doesn't attack these enzymes when they come into the circulation, because they're chaperoned around, they're carried around by this protein carrier called the alpha-2 macroglobulin. The beautiful thing is that when the alpha-2 macroglobulin is activated by these proteolytic enzymes, that alpha-2 macroglobulin becomes a cytokine catcher. It has high affinity for TNF-alpha, for transforming growth factor beta, for interleukin-6. So by catching those pro-inflammatory cytokines, guess what? You're quenching inflammation at that point. Enzymes also break down and remove necrotic debris in wounds. I'll show you some of that. And they also reduce acute phase reactants like CRP and fibrinogen. Okay, so just in these 12 bullets right here, ladies and gentlemen, you are able to use these proteolytic enzymes in clinical practice starting tomorrow for any condition that walks in your door. Why? Inflammation is the common denominator of any condition that walks in through your door, whether it's autoimmune, whether it's cancer, whether it's cardiovascular, diabetes. Every condition that walks through our door, 99.99% of them are going to have inflammation at its core. And if you have a proteolytic enzyme that targets that inflammation, then you're doing your patient a very good service. All right, let's take a look at the first bullet. Systemic enzyme therapy has been shown to overcome the cytokine storm or immunosuppression seed infections and to salvage the host's immune system. Okay, this is done in multiple ways. First of all, you're able to decrease that cytokine storm because these proteolytic enzymes have an ability to reduce the pathogenic load in the system. They have antiviral, they have anti-parasitic, they have antifungal properties. So by reducing that pathogenic load, then you're going to quench that inflammatory response and lower that cytokine storm. They also modulate the immune system. Okay, when you have a hyperactive immune system, it quenches that immune system down. And when you have an underperforming or a hypoactive immune system, it helps it stimulates it to increase its immune capacity. Okay, so it's not an adaptogen, but it has adaptogenic-like properties. If the immune system's revved up too much, it quenches it down. If it's not producing enough reaction to pathogens, then it increases the immune system. So it has an ability to quench inflammation, and through their ability to reduce and increase pro-inflammatory cytokines. Okay, so the beautiful thing about proteolytic enzymes is they're not like steroids, where steroids, when you take them, it actually shuts off your immune system. It just completely shuts off your immune system to where you don't feel any more symptoms. But guess what? Now you're vulnerable to other things by not having a alert immune system. Okay, proteolytic enzymes are able to reduce and increase pro-inflammatory cytokines when they are needed. In the beginning of a health challenge, you need pro-inflammatory cytokines. So proteolytic enzymes stimulate those pro-inflammatory cytokines. But whenever the pathogen or the immune challenge is dealt with, then the proteolytic enzymes are able to quench the immune system, okay, by reducing those pro-inflammatory cytokines. So that's the difference between proteolytic enzymes and steroids. The steroids is going to shut off the immune system, period. The proteolytic enzymes are going to help increase it when the immune system is needed and quench it when the immune system needs to slow down. They're also able to help potentiate macrophage activity. So when you have an immune challenge, macrophage activity is increased by 700% through these proteolytic enzymes. And this is an example from a Baylor study that was performed on Transformation's proteolytic enzyme. They showed that by dosing our TPP protease, we were able to show a decrease in these pro-inflammatory cytokines, and this one, such as TNF-alpha. So you see here, the above figure shows how TEC's protease allowed the synthesis and secretion of TNF-alpha. By the way, T1 is a baseline measurement of TNF-alpha. They took 29 individuals, divided them into two. Half of them were giving a placebo. The other half were given the proteolytic enzyme blend by Transformation Enzyme Corporation. The blue is the group that was given the proteolytic blend, and the gray is the control. They were given a placebo. At baseline, they measured T1, they measured TNF-alpha. They measured TNF-alpha again 21 days after 21 days of dosing. Okay, remember the blue got the formula, the gray did not. Okay, after 21 days, they measured TNF-alpha again. And then after the 21 days, they went ahead and did a immune challenge. They put these individuals through an exercise regimen that created inflammation. And you will see how TNF-alpha, after the challenge, TNF-alpha went up. But the protease group, you see how their TNF-alpha started going down. And they measured that post the exercise, 3 hours after the exercise, 24 hours after the exercise, and 48 hours after the exercise. Now, when you compare that to the placebo group, they had the rise after the exercise regimen of inflammation with TNF-alpha. It lowered, but then whoop, it spiked up again. So TNF-alpha, after 48 hours, continued to be high in the placebo group, where the protease group kept having a steady decrease of TNF-alpha. They also measured it with interleukin-1 beta. Now remember, TNF-alpha, interleukin-1 beta, interleukin-12, the COX-2 enzyme, these are pro-inflammatory cytokines, and the COX-2 enzyme is an enzyme, metabolic enzyme, that helps in increasing that inflammatory cascade. Interleukin-1 beta also, as you can see here, the rise in interleukin-1 beta immediately post-exercise for the protease group was less than half that seen in the placebo group, and demonstrates effective control of inflammation. Interleukin-6, another pro-inflammatory cytokine. The protease group had overall lower serum concentrations of interleukin-6 than the placebo group. Baylor also showed interleukin-12, looking at the study results post-exercise to 48 hours post-exercise. the levels of interleukin-12 dropped 63% in the protease group compared to a 16% increase in the placebo group. This is the COX-2 enzyme that was also measured in this study. These also note that these levels appear more controlled in the protease group post-exercise, whereas the placebo group showed a 41% increase in the COX-2. Okay, it was more of a steady state with the protease group, and the placebo group had a upshot of that COX-2. Okay, so there was a 41% increase in the COX-2 on the placebo versus the protease group. The second bullet I pointed out was enzymes cleave the antigenic surface proteins of organisms and digest their outer coat. Well, as you know, certain viruses have certain proteins that are around their capsule. In this, here you have the E protein, the S protein, and the M protein. And this is an example of how these enzymes cleave the surface proteins of these organisms and digest their outer coat. So in this slide right here, we see notable morphological changes observed when HIV virus is exposed in vitro to bromelain. Slide A shows the virus, pointed by red arrows right here, as you can see, having a perfect circular shape, whereas in slide B, when exposed to bromelain, it shows a virus shape distorted in a more oval or irregular shapes. This is from the Journal of Engineering and Applied Sciences. Okay, this is an electron microscope results of HIV virus before, slide A, and after, slide B, exposure to bromelain enzyme. As you can see, there's morphological changes, okay, after bromelain was put in. Why? Well, once it starts digesting that outer coat of the virus disintegrates, as shown here in this slide. This is another example, okay? Samples from, samples from 2 patients containing HPV virus were exposed to bromelain and then tested by way of PCR in order to detect the presence of HPV DNA. The outcome presented in figure 2 clearly shows that there was a substantial increase in concentration of nucleic acid following treatment with bromelain compared to the control. The increase of the DNA concentrations from both samples was possible because the capsid of the HPV virus and some of the membrane of the cell was degraded, which allowed the DNA of the virus to leak into the solution tested. Okay, so this clearly shows by PCR analysis how pre-treatment of HPV virus, you had a certain amount of DNA in the petri dish, and after bromelain, that DNA, as it leaked out because you were degrading that capsid, that DNA started increasing in that dish. Same holds true for biofilm. I know a lot of practitioners treat biofilm. So, biofilms are ubiquitous in nearly all species of microorganisms, such as bacteria, fungi, yeast, algae, protozoa, and viruses, are able to adhere to surfaces and or to each other to form biofilms. What makes up this biofilm is a self-produced matrix of hydrated extracellular polymeric substances. And they're composed of polysaccharides, proteins, nucleic acids, lipids, and membrane vesicles. So the way these proteolytic enzymes degrade these biofilms is that they degrade the extracellular polymeric substances by way of hydrolysis. That hydrolytic activity on polysaccharides, proteins, and lipids, remember, lipases break down lipids, proteases break down proteins, and carbohydrates break down polysaccharides. So what you're actually doing is you're starting to break apart what that biofilm is composed of. Now, this enhances the action of antibiotics. Why? Because now that you break up that biofilm, the internal residents are being exposed. So now antibiotics can get in there. By the way, antibiotics can do nothing for biofilm. It cannot destroy that film that's being put together by these pathogens. So now, once you break up that biofilm structure, now the antibiotics can get in there. Remember, the Proteolytic enzymes also have anti-inflammatory properties. They support the detection and attack of biofilm inhabitants by the immune system, because now that you break up that biofilm, now those pathogens are exposed, and now the immune system can get in there and get rid of it. So this controls the viral pathogenic load. The other bullet, they reduce number and activity of receptors for pathogens on host cells. Thus, pathogen attachment is hampered and infectivity decreases. Okay, that's important, because remember what I said, if you have a pathogen that comes in and they don't have a receptor to latch onto, then they can't infect. And now that pathogen becomes non-harmful. So what these proteolytic enzymes do is they selectively cleave off certain receptors that certain pathogens are able to attach to. And in this example here, as you're able to read the slide, E. coli has in the intestines, E. coli has been known to be able to attach to the K88 plus E. coli receptor in the intestines. And bromelain, one of a proteolytic enzyme, is able to be used clinically to prevent diarrhea, because once that E. coli attaches to the receptor, then it can lead into diarrhea. So by these proteolytic enzymes reducing those receptors, E. coli is not able to attach, and now the effect of that E. coli pathogen is going to be shunted. Okay, so they treated pig intestines with bromelain, and the results, as you can see here, extended our initial observations and confirmed that bromelain can inactivate the E. coli receptors in vivo, and also show that bromelain protects against E. coli-induced diarrhea. Given the similarities in the mechanism of pathogenesis of E. coli strains that affect piglets and humans, these data suggest that bromelain may be of clinical use to protect against human E. coli infections. Okay, so basically, they took piglets, they injected them with E. coli, and they saw how these E. coli were not able, or they did not have their receptor attachment to be able to produce their diarrhea affecting these piglets. Fourth, they detoxify blood and remove viruses from circulation. They act as biological vacuum cleaners and eliminate impurities, foreign proteins, immune complexes, and harmful microorganisms. Remember what I said in the ripple effect of toxicity. When you have toxicity, that creates inflammation, and that inflammation eventually creates imbalances in many of our 11 systems of our body. So when you dose with proteolytic enzymes, what you're doing is you're getting rid of those impurities. You're getting rid of that toxicity. Okay, you're getting rid of foreign proteins. You're getting rid of immune complexes. Now, antibodies sometimes attach to antigens, but that antigen-antibody complexes, I'm going to show you in a few other slides, sometimes they can get clogged into joints, into certain tissues in joints, and that creates more inflammation, and that creates pain. So I'm going to show you in a few slides how those immune complexes can also be dealt with. Enzymes aid in the destruction of cancer cells, and they do this partly by inhibiting, remember the cell that I showed you in the beginning, the NF-kappa beta pathway that starts creating pro-inflammatory cytokines. The COX-2 enzyme, it inhibits the COX-2 enzyme, as the Baylor study showed previously. And by modulating the NF-kappa beta inflammatory pathway, and by also inhibiting the COX-2 enzyme, what you're going to do is you're also going to reduce the prostaglandin E2, which is the pro-inflammatory prostaglandin that is produced by a triggered and upregulated COX-2. Bromelain also markedly has in vivo anti-tumor activity for the following cell lines by way of inhibiting NF-kappa beta, the COX-2, and the pro-inflammatory prostaglandins. We're able to modulate and able to have that anti-tumor activity. And this has been shown in the literature to have anti-tumor activity for these following cell lines: P388 leukemia, sarcoma, Ehrlich acidic tumor, Lewy lung carcinoma, and ADC 755 mammary adenocarcinoma. In these studies, intraperitoneal administration of bromelain after 24 hours of tumor cell inoculation resulted in tumor regression. That's huge. That is way cool. Enzymes cause enhancement of immune cells to kill bacteria, viruses, molds, and fungi. So enzymes such as bromelain, papain, and amylase increase proliferation of peripheral blood mononuclear cells, production of interleukin-6 and interleukin-1 beta. Remember, in the beginning, we need these pro-inflammatory cytokines so that we can deal with these bacteria, viruses, molds, and fungi. So we need production of interleukin-6 and interleukin-1 beta in the beginning. So proteolytic enzymes don't shut off the immune system, they modulate it. So in the beginning, it helps produce these inflammatory cytokines. But later on, it helps quench these inflammatory cytokines when these guys are dealt with, okay? They also increase granulocyte, monocyte colony stimulating factors. They also increase TNF-alpha and type 1 cytokine interferon alpha production, and macrophage activity is enhanced up to 700%. Phagocytosis is also accelerated. So this is how these proteolytic enzymes are able to help the immune cells kill bacteria, viruses, molds, and fungi. I already showed you a couple of viruses, the HIV virus and the HPV virus, how the proteolytic enzyme bromelain was able to degrade their capsid, thereby causing them to be of no harm. Enzymes break down immune complexes, which block the immune cells. Remember, I told you that sometimes antigen antibody complexes, they get lodged into tissues and into joints, creating inflammation. So what these enzymes, proteolytic enzymes, do is they dissolve immune complexes by removing the FC part, this part right here, the fragment crystallization, which is part of the antibody, of the immunoglobulin, and eliminate immune complexes from circulation. In the early phase, there may be worsening of the situation due to release of immune complexes fixed to tissues into the blood. This is the Herxheimer reaction. Remember, anytime you're pulling out antigen antibody complexes, anytime you're pulling out toxins from tissues and from joints, well, those things are going to come into circulation, and you're going to feel, you could feel a headache or weakness, fatigue, feverish, because you're pulling out toxins and antigen antibody complexes into the circulation. You can feel sick in the beginning, but eventually when you get rid of all that, you're going to feel better. So that's what a Herxheimer reaction is. But I haven't had a patient that goes for more than a week, if they do. A lot of patients, most patients don't feel that Herxheimer reaction, but some do, and when they do, it won't go on for more than a week or two. So it's not that the proteolytic enzymes are harming them. No, it's that they're cleaning them out and detoxifying them. So they will feel icky before they feel better. Enzymes also accelerate the volume and fluidity of blood flow. They do this by reducing fibrinogen. Remember, fibrinogen is an acute phase reactant. Anytime inflammation goes up, fibrinogen automatically goes up, just like C-reactive protein. So in one of the studies I performed in-house, and it was a clinical observation, I was able to show how clinically proteolytic enzymes are able to decrease fibrinogen, decrease CRP in a number of patients that I put it on. They're also able to enhance conversion of plasminogen to plasmin, which degrades fibrin. Remember, plasmin is made, and that plasmin starts degrading fibrin. So this is good for scar tissue. It inhibits fibrin from forming protective matrix around the injured area, as this matrix inhibits tissue drainage, promotes edema, and blocks circulation of blood flow. Now, this is important, okay, because when too much fibrin, when there's too much inflammation and fibrinogen is overexpressed and it's very elevated, then fibrin starts putting down scar tissue in an uncontrolled fashion. So it's not that the proteolytic enzymes is going to inhibit fibrin, it's that it's going to modulate it so that the protective matrix around the injured area will allow tissue drainage and allow circulation to get through to the injured site. Anytime we have circulation going through to an injured site, then we're going to have, again, nutrients, we're going to have oxygen, we're going to have water going into the injured site. So these proteolytic enzymes are able to degrade heavy placed fibrin tissue, forming big scar tissue. It's able to break down that scar tissue to make it to where the tissues that have been healed by the scar tissue is able to get some blood flow in there. Okay, the proteolytic enzymes also helps prevent aggregation of blood platelets. Enzymes such as bromelain modulate arachidonic pathway. Okay, thromboxane production is decreased with no effect on cyclooxygenase. This leads to a decrease in edema and inflammation and reestablishment of balance between the two types of prostaglandin. Remember, we have a prostaglandin that is pro-inflammatory, and we have a prostaglandin that is anti-inflammatory. Whenever you have too much of the pro-inflammatory, well, you're going to get inflammation gone raw. If you're able to get the anti-inflammatory prostaglandins elevated, then you're going to have a balance between the two, and you're going to have less pain as a result of that. Enzymes activate alpha-2 macroglobulin, the cytokine catcher, which usually exists in blood in an inactive form. Remember, I told you in the beginning, the alpha-2 macroglobulin is a carrier. Okay, it's in our system, our cells make them. And anytime you get proteolytic enzymes, you dose proteolytic enzymes into the system, anytime you supplement proteolytic enzymes into the system, these alpha-2 macroglobulin get upregulated and they carry the protease in the blood. Okay, so here is what the alpha-2 macroglobulin looks like. Okay, and it has a site that is able to fit the protease. Okay, now this is an inactive alpha-2 macroglobulin. When the protease comes into the circulation, when it comes into the system, this alpha-2 macroglobulin grabs the protease and it becomes active. It is activated by this protease. Now this protease and the alpha-2 macroglobulin start going and traveling to sites of inflammation. And the immune system grabs this alpha-2 macroglobulin protease complex and brings it to sites of injury, and brings it to sites of inflammation, and brings it to sites where there's pathogen activity. Okay? And then these proteolytic enzymes go off and exert their anti-inflammatory properties, anti-pathogenic properties, anti-mucolytic properties, and everything that this proteolytic enzyme is designed to do. This alpha-2 macroglobulin also has high affinity for pro-inflammatory cytokines, such as TNF-alpha, interleukin-1 beta, TGF-beta, things that are overexpressed and upregulated in times of inflammation, okay? So this in turn promotes faster clearance of cytokine, TNF-alpha. The stimulus for expression of the adhesion molecules is reduced. This assists in minimizing the heightened inflammatory process. So pretty cool stuff right here with this alpha-2 macroglobulin. Enzymes also break down and remove necrotic debris in wounds. Now, another example, another proteolytic enzyme example comes from papain. And by the way, bromelain is part of the papain superfamily. Papain has a family of enzymes that makes it, and bromelain is part of that papain superfamily. So they act as debris-removing agents with no harmful effect on sound tissues because of the enzyme's specificity. You have to understand this. I get a lot of practitioners ask me, can you take proteolytic enzymes when a patient has an ulcer? I'm going to explain this. There's a school of thought out there that you can't take proteolytic enzymes because it's going to make that ulcer grow bigger. It's going to eat away at that ulcer. No, that is simply not true. Proteolytic enzymes are very specific as what their substrates are. Okay? Healthy tissue have anti-proteases. Necrotic tissue do not have anti-proteases. So the enzyme is going to work on necrotic tissue that do not possess the anti-protease. If it's a healthy tissue with an anti-protease, then it's not going to be acted upon that enzyme. So do not worry about giving your patients with an ulcer or with a wound proteolytic enzymes. It will not make that wound bigger. What it will do is have a debridement effect. It's going to debride that wound of necrotic tissue, and that sometimes doesn't feel too good. Okay, so there is a little burning sensation with that. Now, just imagine you cutting your hand and placing some antiseptic agent like merthiolate, or when you're cleaning the wound, that doesn't feel good. It stings, it hurts, but in the long run, you're disinfecting the wound so that you can create scar tissue and close the wound. Well, the same thing happens internally. When you have a proteolytic enzyme going in there and disinfecting and getting rid of necrotic tissue, well, it's going to have some burning effect to it. So there is some discomfort, but it's not that it's boring a bigger hole in that ulcer. No, it's just cleaning it up so it could heal properly. Okay, so do not be afraid. Topical bromelain separates eschar at the interface with living tissue. You see here, bromelain separates eschar at the interface with living tissue. It is hypothesized that bromelain activates collagenase in living tissue, which then attacks the denatured collagen in the eschar. This produces a demarcation between living and dead tissue. By using bromelain, grafting can occur as soon as 24 hours after the accident. Utilizing bromelain cream in the treatment of burns usually results in minimal or no scar tissue formation. See, that's an example of what I am talking about. It's not going to make that wound bigger. No, it's going to separate the necrotic tissue from the living tissue, get rid of the necrotic tissue so that living tissue can heal properly. All right, our last bullet. Reduce acute phase reactants like CRP and fibrinogen. I actually did a little observational study in-house at Transformation where we took a number of patients and we measured their fibrinogen and their C-reactive protein baseline at 6 weeks and then finally at 12 weeks. And we were able to show how 3 caps 4 times a day was able to reduce fibrinogen and C-reactive protein. And remember, these are acute phase reactants, which they increase sharply when there's states of chronic inflammation, okay? Fibrinogen, acute phase reactant, which increases sharply in the state of inflammation and presence of interleukin-6. It's a key factor in blood viscosity and promotes formation of blood clots inside coronary arteries. We were able to show how proteolytic enzymes reduce this fibrinogen. C-reactive protein, also an acute phase reactant, which increases sharply in response to inflammation. They activate the complement system, and it's synthesized by the liver in response to cytokines such as interleukin-1 beta, interleukin-6, interleukin-12, and TNF-alpha released by macrophages and fat cells. And this is a little bit of data that I provide here. I took 3 of the participants, because I separated them in a placebo group, a low dose 1 cap twice a day, a medium dose 2 caps 3 times a day, and a high dose 3 caps 4 times a day. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about this study I performed. I did not modify lifestyle factors. I did not tell them to eat healthy. I did not tell them to quit smoking, quit drinking. I did not tell them to exercise. I told them, look, if you're partying like a rock star, keep partying like a rock star. I just want to see what these proteolytic enzymes are going to do to these acute phase reactants. And so I didn't modify any lifestyle factors. I didn't make them eat healthy or be healthy. They continued doing what they were doing. One of the participants at baseline, their CRP was 20.9. Now, I like to see CRP below 0.5. They started with a CRP of 20. At 6 weeks, their CRP was 12. At 12 weeks, their CRP was 7. Their fibrinogen started at 400, came down to low 300s. Fibrinogen I like to see between 350 and 400, or 300 to 400. This participant started with a CRP of 12.3 at 6 weeks. It was already down to 0.5. At 12 weeks, 0.8. Fibrinogen started at 439. At the end of the study, 297. As you can see, all the fibrinogen at the beginning started high. At the end, went down to normal limits, normal levels. Another participant started with CRP at 2.5 by the end of the study. At 12 weeks, 0.3. Their fibrinogen was 342 in the beginning. At the end of the study, 261. So this is to show you that, first of all, the Baylor study showed how pro-inflammatory cytokines such as TNF-alpha, interleukin-6, interleukin-1 beta, interleukin-12, the COX-2 enzyme, they were reduced by transformation proteolytic blend. And I just did a follow-up study of that. I piggybacked on that and showed how these clinical markers, because, you know, I know practitioners don't always, or majority of practitioners don't, they don't run these markers in the blood. They don't run interleukin-6. They don't run interleukin-1 beta, TNF-alpha. These are those just markers that we don't look at in clinical practice. But we do look at CRP, sed-rate, fibrinogen, homocysteine. We do look at these inflammatory markers in our blood. At least I know most practitioners run high sensitivity CRP. So I wanted to show that just like Baylor showed how those pro-inflammatory cytokines were reduced, I also wanted to show that these clinical markers that we see in practice are also reduced. And this was done at 3 caps 4 times a day. Okay. The Baylor study was also 3 caps 4 times a day. So you can get an idea of how you're going to reduce pro-inflammatory cytokines and reduce these clinical markers with 3 caps 4 times a day. Now, if you make the patient eat healthy, have a good diet, exercise, sleep, if you do your due diligence and get rid of the triggering factors for this inflammatory reaction, then you may not need 3 caps 4 times a day. Okay, remember, these 3 caps 4 times a day were people that I told, keep partying like a rock star. I didn't change lifestyle factors. But if you change lifestyle factors to where they're eating healthy and you're taking care of any pathogenic overload, then in the beginning you may need 3 caps 4 times a day, but you can bring it down to 2 or 1 cap 4 times a day. Okay? Don't be afraid of doing more than 3 caps 4 times a day, because these proteolytic enzymes, they do not have toxicity issues. Okay, your body usually brings them in and eliminate them when they're done, or recycle them. Okay, but there's no toxicity issues. They don't accumulate in your tissue, so there's no risk of toxicity with this. All right, enzyme therapy. So let's go to some of the products that you may be familiar with. We have a digestive, proteolytic, and a probiotic. So the digestive, this is to enhance digestion and absorption of nutrients. This digest product has everything you need to digest whatever it is you're putting on the plate. Okay, it has carbohydrates, lipases, proteases, among other peptidases, so that you can digest properly and absorb more efficiently. Because remember, we need those nutrients to make it into our circulation and be sent to the all your cells. We like to take proteolytic, the protease, in between meals. Okay, so that way it has nothing to digest If it's taken in between meals on an empty stomach, then they will be absorbed and they will impart their benefit in improving blood flow. It will support detoxification and manage the inflammation I talked about. We also recommend probiotics. Of course, supports digestion and the immune system while it maintains a healthy balance of friendly flora in the GI tract. And there's different products that Transformation carries, and I'm going to go over them so you can know. Digeszyme is a very gentle blend for those that are sensitive. Transformation has a Zyme line, anything that ends with Zyme. It has everything you need, but at a more gentle formula for those that are very sensitive. Okay, and this is, by the way, Transformation's original digestive formula. It's gentle and soothing to the GI tract. Okay, TPP Digest, anything that has TPPP, that's Transformation's professional protocol. That's the more potent product for people that are not sensitive in terms of their digestion. Okay, most comprehensive therapeutic formula with highest amount of lipase. Okay, TPP Carbo G. Now this Carbo G has the DPP4 enzyme, which helps in breaking down gluten and casein. So this is for the people that are sensitive to gluten and casein. But I like to tell my patients, this isn't a license for you to go out and eat gluten if you're intolerant or even allergic to gluten. No. All this does is whenever, like, let's say you go out to a restaurant and you may have had a contamination because you're not in control of what they cook with in the kitchen when you go out to eat at a restaurant, and you may get exposed to gluten or casein, then the Carbo G is definitely going to help in breaking down that casein and that gluten peptide. Okay, so complete digestive formula to assist those with gluten intolerance, digest carbohydrates with gluten. The lipozyme, again, remember, if you see a zyme, that's the more gentle formula, second highest lipase formula. And we also have a powder Digeszyme, okay, non-encapsulated digest formula, and this one has a DPP4 in it as well as the Carbo G. Then we have a kids line, okay, digest powder, non-encapsulated, and this one also has a DPP4 in it. And we also have digest chewables for kids that are already teething and like to chew. And this one also has a DPP4 in it for the gluten. And you can go over these. This is what all what the Digeszyme contains. As you can see, it has proteases, okay, polysaccharidic enzymes for digestion of carbohydrates, starch, sugar, and fiber. The lipases for digestion of the lipids. It also has some probiotic in it. Okay, there's no other ingredients, so we don't use fillers. No gluten or soy. We keep our products very clean, all natural, and we always keep in mind that Transformation it specializes in digestion in the gut. So we don't want to burden the gut by using fillers, by using artificial colors, artificial flavors, preservatives. We just put in enzymes, probiotic strains, and very little other things, but nothing artificial. The TPP Digest, you can take a look at these slides. It has the proteolytic activity in it for proper digestion and absorption of amino acids. It's got lipase, polysaccharidic enzymes, and you could go back and do this. We put some clinical applications for these that you can also know. Wellness and prevention, inability to digest fat, carbohydrates, proteins, gallbladder removal. People that have had their gallbladder removed, their digestive capacity is hindered. Good for cardiovascular disease. Remember, anti-inflammatory property. Good for bloating, indigestion, GERD, obesity, hormone imbalance, conditions that challenge major organ systems, pancreatic insufficiency, all chronic health challenges. Remember, folks, chronic inflammation is the common denominator of everything that walks through your door. So anytime you are able to quench inflammation, anytime you're able to have a substance that is antiviral, antipathogenic in general, is going to lower that burden. Anything that detoxifies is going to lower the toxicity burden. Anything that is able to decrease inflammation is going to give your immune system a break. So I use this in my practice as my first line of defense for any patient that walks through my door. Enzymes is where I start. TPP Carbo G, like I said, it has the DPP4 in it, and you could read some of that. It also has other herbs that are good for inflammation and gut health. We also have other proteolytic formulas. PureZyme is the protease, but remember, it has a zyme line. It has a zyme behind it, so it's the same protease, but it's more gentle. Okay, a protease is a Transformations Professional Protocol protease. It's the most potent formula we have in terms of proteolytic activity. For those that have an allergy to bromelain, TPP protease 375K has no bromelain in it. Okay, there's some people that are sensitive or cannot tolerate or are allergic to bromelain. So TPP protease has bromelain in it. Protease 375K does not have bromelain in it, but it does have proteolytic activity by way of other enzymes. TPP protease IFC is just the same TPP protease, but with herbs, antioxidant herbs, and herbs like curcumin and other herbs that have antioxidant properties. So this we use for protease IFC. Stands for inflammation control. So it's just proteolytic enzymes with herbs that have antioxidant properties. PureZyme, this is just, like I said, and these are smaller capsules, by the way. Remember, it's a more gentle formula. This is all that it could be that has a clinical application for. Cancer of any kind, arthritis, CVD, heart disease, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, pathogenic load. Remember, pathogenic load, hepatitis, kidney disorders, renal insufficiency, eczema, psoriasis, asthma, emphysema, hormone imbalance, autoimmune disorders, autism, diabetes. Anytime there's inflammation, autism, inflammation in the gut, there's a gut-brain connection. Inflamed gut, inflamed brain. If you're providing kids with autism with an anti-inflammatory, all-natural enzyme product, you are going to impact that inflammation in that child. TPP protease, this is just a proteolytic blend with bromelain in it. And you see all the clinical applications on this one as well. IFC, remember what I told you? It's the proteolytic blend with some antioxidant herbs and some minerals in it that have free radical antioxidant properties as well. Okay, it has things such as kelp, Irish moss, alpha lipoic acid, bladderwrack. You see everything in here. Ginkgo leaf, and we have different probiotic formulas. Plantadophilus, it's the original formula that transformation started with. We have TPP probiotic. Now, Plantadophilus it only has one strain, and we'll look at their we'll look at their label in a second. TPP probiotic, it has about more strains, about 5 or 6 different strains, with about 15 billion CFUs per capsule. TPP probiotic has about 10 to 11 different strains, and it has 42.5 billion colony forming units per capsule. This is the strongest probiotic that we have. And then we have TPP transbiotic formula, this is an innovative prebiotic. It's a spore form probiotic in it. This is the Plantadophilus. Lactobacillus plantarum is the only strain that's in it. Okay, 6 billion CFUs per capsules. The probiotic 42.5, these are all the strains that you'll get out of this one, okay? And it's 10 bacteria providing 42.9 billion colony-forming units per capsule, okay? The transbiotic bacterium blend provides 1.75 billion CFUs per capsule. It has the Bacillus subtilis, which is a spore probiotic designed by nature and found in our environment. Lactobacillus is found naturally and in the digestive system, okay? 3,4 Pro blend of highly specific bacteriophages, which is a form of a prebiotic, which supports growth of beneficial bacteria in the gut and gets rid of pathogenic bacteria, things such as E. coli. So this is good for traveler's diarrhea. I've taken this on all of my overseas travel. And well, this is it for me. Thank you very much. You can go to for its enzyme therapy seminars to tdcseminars.com. We have monthly webinar series, mycliniciantoolbox.com, body type training, biochemicalindividualism.com. And I put together, along with Amy Rawls, director of our education, we put together an Enzyme 101 course. In case you are interested in learning more about enzymes, we cover from A to Z on this Enzyme 101 course. You can find that at enzymeacademy.thinkific.com. And if you need to get a hold of any one of us, feel free to go to Transformation Enzyme Corporation and check out our website. And this is done for me. Questions and orders, clinical support. Here's some information on some of our people at Transformation. Amy Rawls, like I said, Director of Education and Clinical Services. This is in case you want to order. Account and questions and setup. Monica is also here to help. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, and thank you.
Well, thank you so much for your time today and for sharing all your incredible information. I think the fibrogen levels became very heightened this past year, due to the recent pandemic and things like that, and the induction of the vaccination. I think Dr. Peter McCullough made that pretty famous. So I really appreciated your slide deck. And I also appreciated you addressing the fact that proteolytic enzymes are not going to break down the digestive system. I mean, that is one of the biggest things that I hear, in natural health, which I think is an accepted deception of that's not really how it works. Right. Is that if you take too many of these enzymes, you're going to burn a hole in your stomach. So I really appreciated you saying about that. Can you tell me, do you know much about the Immune AV supplement? I have used that a lot with my clients, and I think it works tremendous. Are you familiar with that product? I'm sure you are. But
yes, ma'am, I am familiar with that. Yeah, so that's a product we put together. We actually had two different products, but we kind of put them into one. And it has our proteolytic enzymes blend in there. All our products have our proteolytic enzymes blend because we are an enzyme company, and we believe highly of. And like I said in the beginning, we've just scratched the surface on the amazing properties of proteolytic enzymes. And there's not a lot of research out there, but the research that it is out there is pretty compelling. And I just wish this would get out there a lot more. So our AV Immune, we use it in times of health challenges, like, when the flu season comes around. We use it to support. It has a lot of herbs that have antiviral properties that has been shown in the literature. It has zinc, quercetin, which is a zinc ionophore, allows the zinc to get into the cell and do its deed. So it's pretty much a proteolytic enzyme blend with herbs and minerals that have antiviral properties. It has vitamin A, it has C, it has zinc. So that's what I use. That's what I give my kids. We have these challenges, and it helps tremendously bring down that pathogenic load.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as a practitioner, I'm always looking at, product lines of like, what can I use strategically and therapeutically and what can be on the daily. So coming out of here, I think that, systemic enzyme therapy is nothing new. I think it was brought to the forefront in the last couple of years. But it's been something that I've always used for sickness, for inflammation, for injury, for infection, like whatever that looks like, breaking biofilms as a, complementary modality to other protocols. So I
Right.
loved how you put it in there. I loved how you showed, NF-kappa B and inhibitory NF-kappa B. People don't talk about that not enough in that pathway, so that was awesome. The
Right.
other thing I want to point out about transformation enzymes is your label. Many people don't realize that milligrams are just a unit of weight, but you actually put the activity units on your label.
Right.
Can you just touch on that a little bit, doctor? Just what
Yeah.
is the difference when I
Oh,
walk into a big box store and I pick up something off the shelf versus what I'm going to get here from a doctor's store?
that's a great question. So enzymes are not, enzymes don't go by weight. Okay, so like for example, you take a mineral, you take a vitamin. Because of toxicity issues, there is a certain amount accepted per kilogram body weight. Anything over the accepted amount, it could bring you some toxicity from that vitamin or mineral. Enzymes are completely different. They don't work by weight. You measure them by activity. And you don't need to have the milligram dosage on it because it's not telling you how much activity is in that milligram. Okay, so we break it down into HUTs and all the other FIPs and all the other measurement of units of measure that actually speak about their activity. Okay, so the TPP protease, for example, it has the bromelain in it in the proteolytic blend. Actually has about 600,000 HUTs, which tells how much activity that capsule is going to have when you take it. So you don't measure enzymes by weight, you measure them by the amount of activity you have. So when you buy a bottle and it says proteolytic blend 100 milligrams, you don't know what the activity is in there. So you don't know if that's even going to do anything. But when you buy a product and it has the amount of activity in it, then you can know that what you're taking is going to be potent. Okay, so that's why I mentioned in my presentation, don't be afraid of taking high amounts of proteolytic enzymes. They have no toxicity issues. They don't accumulate in the tissue. Your immune system actually recognizes them as nutrients. It gets that alpha 2 macroglobulin to carry it around for the immune system to use it in its favor. And whenever it's done with it, it either eliminates it or recycles it. So what you're actually doing is you're saving your pancreas from having a burden of creating enzymes for systemic benefit. And to make an enzyme, it's highly, highly energy consuming. So when you're supplementing, then you're sparing your pancreas from having that highly energy consuming event happening. And also, enzymes don't have negative feedback loop. So what I mean by that is just because you're taking an enzyme, you're not going to shut off the pancreas.
Another great myth in our industry, right? If you
Yes,
take too
yes.
many enzymes, your pancreas just doesn't create them anymore. But really, you're just taking the burden off, almost like how intermittent fasting works for our body, right? It activates P53, modulates all kinds of apoptosis or DNA repair, depending on what your body needs or wants to do. So yeah, I love it. I've always loved enzymes. I was so excited I got to do this webinar. Candace normally does the brand webinars, but as a practitioner, I was like, "Ooh, I have a lot of questions." So
I
thank you
love
for
how
giving
you
me.
I love how you mentioned that P53 because it's a very potent tumor suppressor gene,
That's
and,
right.
and bromelain actually has a positive effect on that P53.
Yeah, it
So
modulates it. Yeah,
exactly. So you understand me, you get me.
I do. But it really helps to hear, it helps validate what I know. And there's not a lot of research. So when I do go out there and I'm looking around for, I want to make sure that what I'm saying is correct, or I want to, I have a theory on something. You can't find the research. So I really appreciate all that you're doing with transformation enzyme for the industry, and to give validity to it, because we can have somebody like Dr. McCullough go out there and say, hey, I think that, nattokinase is great for fibrogen. And as you explained what that meant and the high set rate, et cetera, et cetera. But saying a clinical trial and actually proving it through the biochemical pathways are two different things. And we need both. We need people out there putting it into practice, and we need people that can come behind the scenes and explain the biochemistry of what's really going on in the body. And I think when we get that education out there, it takes the mysticism off of the supplement world, off of the enzyme world.
Yes.
And I always tell my clients, like, enzymes are construction workers. They're either going to build something or break it down. And you want those construction workers in there. You want people building and you want people breaking down. So it's my first go-to as well. I love systemic enzyme therapy. I use it for tons of conditions, but my son gets a sprained ankle, we take enzymes, so it just works for all inflammatory processes. So
I have a lot of practitioners ask me, well, so what's the dosage? Well, like I mentioned, don't be afraid of the dosage. I mean, these things get used and eliminated or recycled. So the immune system, your body is going to tell you how much you need. So everybody has their magic number. It's not a cookie cutter for everybody. And I'm going to give you an example. I had a prostate cancer patient. I gave him 30 grams a day. That's an equivalent to about 60 capsules a day. But we had a metastatic prostate adenocarcinoma patient that needed to have a tumor dissolved and to have his PSA come down to normal levels. And I pushed him up to 30 grams a day. That's about 60 capsules a day for about 6 months. And that's what it took for him to do that. We were able to dissolve that prostate tumor, and his PSA went from 336 to 0.6. So
the magic of enzyme.
Of getting those enzymes in there. They're like I said, they don't accumulate in the tissue, and your body recognizes them as a nutrient, and it's going to impart all their benefits systemically.
It's funny how no one ever asks, like, what is the toxicity level of Twinkies? No one asks.
That's a good one.
They worry about natural products that are inside of our bodies. Well, Monica, thanks for stopping in too. I know that people can reach out to you as a practitioner. We love having Transformation Enzyme brand here at Get Healthy Store. They can reach out to Monica if you want to get a wholesale account for your practice. But if you have a Get Healthy Store with us, these are available right now to onboard onto your store, and they will be available to your clients and patients tomorrow, either through your recommendations or just for simple purchase. So, Dr. Milton, it's been an extreme pleasure getting to know you. Thank you so much for your education today. And Monica, thanks for being here. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And catch us next time, because we will be back for more brand marketing and brand webinars right here at Get Healthy Store.
Thank you very much.